Hello, friends. Welcome to the Magic the Gathering unofficial audiobooks podcast. A quick thank you to our newest patrons, Content Angel, Jordan. Thank you so much. And a Content Human, Red Eyed Java. Thank you so much. It's always so much fun to get the emails saying someone joined up. It gets me all giddy and excited. And really, I'm just trying to do my best to get these out. And your support means the world to me. It really does. You can join up too by finding the link in the show notes or by heading to the Patreon, heading to patreon.com and searching for me, Phil Dawson. Another reminder, too, if you want to join the Discord, that link also in the show notes. The discussions will probably start heating up here about the new book we're on, so get in on it. And also, schedule-wise, this chapter happens to be very short, so we'll try to get another one very quickly. All right, let's do this. Chapter 2. The students were gone from the laboratory. Only Master Molzra, his trusted associate Baron, and Silver Man remained among the dark implements and ubiquitous sketches. "You've learned much in your first day," said Baron gently. "We have been observing, remotely. You've interacted well." "I have a friend," the Silver Man volunteered. A creased smile played across Baron's face. "Yes, Teferi, my prodigal prodigy. We know about that." "He told me many things," the probe continued. His voice was edged with suspicion. "He explained the academy to me. He has named me Artie Shovelhead." The mage sighed in irritation. "Teferi is a brilliant young mage, my most promising student, but he likes to stir up trouble. He makes things twice as hard for himself and 3 times as hard for everyone else." "Teferi is a good first friend," interrupted Malzra with an uncharacteristic alacrity. He glanced between the Silver Man and the Man of Flesh, then seemed to withdraw behind his glimmering eyes. "After all, Baron, you said the probe has emotions, needs friends." "Yes," the mage said, diverting the conversation at its awkward turn. "Master Molzra is eager for you to begin the experiments you were created to carry out. That's why we called you back this evening." Baron moved to one wall, opened a small hatch, and drew forth a long pole, 3 times his height. At the tip of the pole was a small hook. Baron hoisted the hook up to the ceiling, engaged it in a hidden slot, and pulled downward once. A large panel in the dome shifted, then slowly separated from the smooth curve. On hydraulic rods, the panel eased downward from the dome. A large, complex machine of glass cylinders, metal casings, and snaking tubes emerged. Lamplight glowed from the descending apparatus, 10 times more massive than the Silver Man himself. "This is a time field distortion device," Master Malzer explained. "It is powered by 4 separate sources of energy: thermal, mechanical, geomagnetic, and of course Thran. The thermal component provides a molecular time clock, an exact measure of the temporal vector, calibrated in atomic vibration per second. The mechanical component rotates the unit about its axis, thus creating beneath the device a cone of radiation, within which the temporal distortion will manifest. This geomagnetic component provides precise coordinates of longitude, latitude, and altitude for the origin and destination points, and Thran power stones, of course, provide the main drive of the machine." The Silver Man wondered aloud. "What is this machine?" "A time machine," Baron explained. "Actually, it provides travel through time and space both. Tonight we plan to test only the temporal components." "You wish me to operate this machine?" the probe guessed. "We wish you to travel in it," Master Malzer replied. "The current design plays havoc with biological creatures. Any organism with a heartbeat, respiration, a sequential digestive tract, a network of neural pathways that rely on chemical reactions is ill-adapted to time field distortions. They die," Baron explained. "Metals are much less susceptible to temporal stresses. Silver, of all metals, showed the least resistance. That is why you were made of silver. That is why you were made to travel through the portal and report back what you've discovered." The Silver Man approached the dangling device. His eyes traced out a circle on the floor beneath the massive machine. "Teferi told me about this. Every machine is made for a specific purpose. Every machine is made to defend you and the Academy against external foes." Master Malzer's eyebrows rose. "Teferi knows that much?" "Everyone seems to," the Silver Man said. "Well, then, yes," the artificer said. "This is a part of that defense. You must not divulge the information we are relating to you." "Of course not."
We intend in time to send you or another probe, or perhaps eventually a person, back to the time of the Thran to divert them from the path that led to these external foes."
"Send me or another probe," echoed the Silver Man, thinking of the fiery furnace, heaps of scrap metal, and workers with shovels.
"This is all utterly secret, of course," Malzra said.
"Yes," replied the Silver Man.
"Tonight's regression will be nothing so grand," assured Baron, apparently sensing the probe's hesitancy. "If things go well, you'll return in time, perhaps as far back as this morning."
"What must I do?" the probe asked.
"You must stand here, within the circle," said Master Malzra. "That is all. You will stand and wait while the machine does its work. When the time regression slows, you must step from the circle to arrive in the former time. You will remain somewhat out of phase in the former time. You will be able to see your surroundings, but no one will be able to see you. This is to protect the time continuity. As the particles of your being gradually align themselves with your surroundings, this out-of-phase effect will lessen and you will become visible. Whether in phase or out, you will be able to affect your environment, but we ask that you make no significant alterations, again, for the sake of temporal integrity. We will control your return trip from this end. When you are drawn back to the present, you will make a report of what you have discovered. Do you understand?"
"I understand," the Silver Man said flatly. "It is my purpose. It is why I was made."
Baron eyed the silver golem narrowly and shook his head. He turned to Malzra and spoke quietly in his ear. "I don't like it. He's been traumatized by Teferi." Malzra laughed quietly. "You are traumatized by Teferi. His emotional cortex is too new. He exhibits the correct emotional response to Teferi. I tell you, I don't like it. He understands. He knows this is the reason he was made. What if he meddles in the time stream? Then we'll draw him back through, and we'll know he isn't sufficient to the task." The Silver Man stood silent while the men spoke, his acute sense picking up every word. "I understand you're eager, Malzra, but we have time. If our experiments work, we'll have all the time in the world. Testing a living creature is not like testing a machine. You can't just dismantle a creature, insert new parts, and start him up again. On the contrary, that's what we just did this morning," Malzra finished, turning away from his associate with a curt gesture. He said to the Silver Man, "Into the circle, then. The power-up phase will take us a few moments." Wordless, the probe stepped into the circle and stood. He could feel the silent, magnificent weight of the time machine hanging above his head. From the precise center of the floor, he watched Malzra and Baron. Baron used the same hooked pole to trigger a hidden panel in the floor. A trefoil section of stone shifted aside, and an array of consoles rose into the room. Copper coils and pulsing tubes spilled from beneath the control panels. Baron checked the various conduits where they were connected with the floor. Malzra, meanwhile, worked adjustments to levers and switches. Fluids began to move through the tubes. A low hum started among the great glass cylinders. Brass fittings buzzed. Even the dome itself rumbled with the mounting sound. A high-pitched whine rose to echo through the lab, and a thin red beam stabbed from the base of the machine. It lanced through the charged air just past the Silver Man's shoulder and neatly struck the circle scribed on the floor. The ray fluttered a moment before sweeping in an arc. It looped the golem once and sped in its course. In moments, that single spinning beam had widened into a crimson cone that enveloped him. The Silver Man stood there, bathed in lurid light, watching his creators. The men were busy at their consoles, drawing up one energy source and leveling off another, directing the beam in its spiraling crescendo, configuring the coordinates of space and time. Light intensified. The artificer's endeavors slowed. The whining hum reached a peak. Master Malzra and Baron soon moved, not at all, frozen in space. Or time. The probe understood. The roaring machine and its whirring cone of light had teased the cord of time down to a frayed nub, and then to nothing. With rising fury, the device plucked at the packed skein of past moments. They, too, began to unravel. No longer motionless, Master Malzra and Baron moved backward, undoing all they had done. Their arms darted with strange jabs like scorpion tails. More than that, the Silver Man also moved, or his past self moved. It trudged backward out of the circle, just as he had trudged forward into it only minutes before. Within the cone of regression, the present-time Silver Man watched in amazement. His doppelganger conferred with Malzra and Baron. Their words were lost to the hum of the machine, but the sense of them was clear, reversed syllables that did not inform or enlighten, but rather disinformed and obscured. All the while they spoke, the ghost golem knew less and less, and the ghost time machine retracted into the dome above. When the brief conference was done, the past-time golem staggered backward toward the door, ignorant of the hidden machine and all that had been said. The regression accelerated. Baron and Malzra scuttled backward about the room, dismantling things, forgetting conversations, reducing conclusions to hypotheses, surrendering step by step the whole march of time. Soon they moved too quickly to seem anything but man-shaped blurs. Then were gone entirely. The lab was dark and empty for some time, except the occasional jag of a mouse backing fitfully across the floor. Eventually the two scholars returned, drawing after them a backwash of assistants and tutors, the galleries above flooded with eager, watchful eyes. The pastime Gollum trudged backward into the midst of it all. His return was heralded by nodding heads and hands coming sharply away from each other, drawing a brittle ovation from the air. The artificers themselves formed a retreating pocket of space into which the Golem walked. He reached a designated spot and settled into immense inertia. There was another time of questions. Malzra, with a suddenness that seemed almost savage, reached toward the probe's neck, performed some quick manipulation, and shoved the creature's head back on its shoulders. In a moment more, he lifted the metal skull piece cleanly away. Within the time machine, the Silver Man stared, stunned to see his own being so quickly and easily dismantled. The body yet stood, though the casing of the head lay now as if discarded on a side table. The inner workings of the Golem's head were laid bare. Cogs and cables gleamed beneath a low set of struts. Light leaked through the whole mass. Malzra was busy tugging at a central silver case, the movements of his fingers awakening twitches in the creature's vivisected frame. Another two jiggles and Malzra drew forth the case. He opened it. Inside lay a dark stone the size of a child's fist. He removed the crystal. All final signs of life fled the creature. The Silverman watched in amazed dread as Malzra held high the stone. Gulping backward laughter came from the gallery. Malzra shouted something that ended the jollity and retreated to a table where he positioned the stone in a metal case. The students in the gallery began to move. Malzra and Baron busied themselves setting tools into cases and rubbing smears of oil from rags onto their hands. As the room slowly emptied, the dissected Golem merely stood, lifeless and headless, in the midst of it all. The regression slowed. The time-traveling Silverman's hulk smoldered heat from temporal stress. He stepped from the coruscating beam. Around him, time resumed its forward march. The students headed back into the gallery. The scholars unpacked their tools and wiped their hands clean. Out of phase and unnoticed by them all, the Silverman approached his headless predecessor. He stared into the vacant silver case jutting from the Golem's neck. He reached up to his own neck, wondering where the catch was that would allow his skull piece to be lifted away. His mind, his emotion, his very essence could be hauled up like a hunk of coal and displayed. He was a mere amusement for children. They had called him friend, but in truth, he was only Shovelhead. Without that dark stone, he was not even that. The Silver Man stared into the undeniable image of his own death. The regression was done. He was suddenly yanked from the time stream and back again, bathed in that rapturous red glow. Master Malzra summoned him to the present. The Silver Man arrived. The beam skittered and danced away, withdrawing into the machine overhead. It too withdrew, trailing gray tendrils of smoke from a temporal stress it had endured. Baron and Malzra stood, blinking at their consoles. Tentative, the two scholars released the controls beneath their fingers and approached the probe. Baron spoke first. "Are you well? Are you capable of rendering a report?" Malzra interrupted.
"My frame is quite hot," the Silver Man responded. "But I am capable. Yes."
"How far back did you go?" Malzra asked.
"Back to this morning, to the time of my awakening."
"Excellent," Malzra said as Baron noted the response on a sheet of paper. "And did you touch or move anything in that time?"
"I touched only the floor with my feet and moved only myself."
"Were you approached by anyone, or was there any other indication that your presence was noted?"
"No."
"What did you observe?" This answer would not come as readily as the others.
"I observed myself dismantled. I observed the core of my being removed. I observed the small, dark, fragile thing that is my mind and self and soul."
The first day of life is always the hardest, to be dragged from whatever warm, safe womb in which one is conceived and then thrust into the cold glare of the world. There's much to adjust to, breathing air instead of liquid for one, being naked and prodded and scrubbed for another. Worst of all, there's that moment when the cord is cut and one is suddenly and irrevocably alone. It is in recognition of such traumas that mother's arms are made. You have no mother. You have no father either. You have a pair of creators, but that is not the same. Neither of us knows how to comfort and protect you. If you need too much nurturing, we may even consider you defective.
Perhaps it is because you were designed to be a tool, a weapon, not a person. Perhaps it is because we have not expected to have to save you. We were hoping you would save us. Baron, Mage Master of Talaria.